Go online and just Google girl. Google young girl, pretty girl, and just see what comes up. Google that and just look by image, like Google search by image, and just see what comes up. And if you get a little creative and think of some other words, you're going to see absolutely everything. Children are reporting that this whole environment is deeply troubling to them. It's deeply agitating to them. Think about this, like just imagine you're a little one and you've not talked about sexuality with your family. You've never seen anything remotely sexual at all. You're at a sleepover and all of a sudden something pops up on screen that you have no context to make sense of. Like zero context to make sense of. What is that going to be like for you? And you have a sense in your mind that it's embarrassing, it's taboo. You're going to get in trouble if you go home and tell your mom or dad. Okay? You're just kind of stuck with those thoughts and images flashing in your mind. And I have to tell you, I get really, really concerned when I talk to young boys around the idea of consent and what would be expected on a first date and what a relationship looks like. Because when you think of what pornography is designed to do, it's not designed to reinforce things like healthy relationships, and consent, right? It's not designed to do that. So all of these young boys, and lots of them, are developing kind of a skewed understanding of how relationships work and how sexuality works, and that's what you're supposed to do when you're on a date. That's what the girl is supposed to do when she's on a date. So here's a story. So I have to say I've got permission to share this with you, and I've changed all of the identifiable information to protect the little girl in this story. But this is a real story. And one of those clinical moments that really propelled me to take action and do something about what I was observing in my clinical practice. And it was a little girl named Sonia. And she was being raised by a single dad, because the mom had died. And she was an only child. And she received an iPad for Christmas. It was science fair. And she was Googling things to get herself ready to do some research for science fair. And there was a period of quiet in the house. And I don't know how many of you have little ones, but when it gets quiet for a while, you think maybe something's up. The dad went to find her and found her in her closet. She had taken off all of her clothes, and she had gotten black electrical tape and wrapped her body up in the tape. And she was stuck. She couldn't get herself unstuck. And she was deeply, deeply embarrassed and worried to call out what her dad was going to think. So she was trying to get herself unstuck, but she just was in a more of a stuck mess. So the dad got her unstuck, cut off the tape, gave her a bath, cried, and sent me an email. The next day, I saw him, and she had seen bondage. She had never had the conversation about sexuality before, and that was her initiation to human sexuality. And it was traumatic for her. So in psychology, we know that there is something called trauma play. When you experience trauma, like when someone has PTSD, they re-experience the trauma as a flashback, as a nightmare. And children will reenact trauma. If you've had a little one in a car accident, they will over and over again smash up the cars in their play. A child that's been sexually abused will reenact that with dolls. This little girl was reenacting what she had seen online. She was trying to process what she had seen because it was bouncing around in her head. She was traumatized by what she saw. And here was this single dad trying to cope and trying to parent this young girl in this 21st century with all of the challenges that it presents. So that was one of the experiences that I had in clinical practice that made me understand I can't just sit on this. I have to share. I have to yell what it is that I am seeing in our children. And as a community, we need to come together and we need to make changes to keep our children safe. It's like we need to inoculate them somehow early so we can set the perception that they have around human sexuality. So if they stumble upon something, it won't have as much of an impact as it would if we just are too embarrassed to talk about sex. We just let them out there and just deal with the consequences. We have to be more proactive than that. I thought through very carefully, how can I share something consumable, something that would be easy to remember, not too much information, but enough that can guide parents in the right direction. And that's what developed the compass.